Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Collecting Vintage Unopened podcast. My name is Brandon Stewart. This is a podcast devoted to discussing anything and everything related to the collecting of unopened material. So rack packs, cello packs, wax boxes, you name it. Tonight I have a very special guest. His name's Mike Cirincione. He's a long-time unopened collector who's been involved with all kinds of vintage unopened for many years. So Mike, thank you so much for joining the podcast this evening.
Brandon, thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to talking about unopened because it's our favorite thing to talk about.
Absolutely. And Mike is in the many of the Facebook groups that I'm in, and he and I actually met at the National this year, and it's wonderful to get to meet some of these people face to face. So it was really nice meeting you at the National.
Same here.
So I thought we could start with you just telling us a little bit about your background in the hobby and how you got into collecting unopened and just a little bit of your story with the hobby.
So I mean, like a lot of us, I started out collecting ripping cards, as a kid, 9-10-year-old kid, collecting, putting sets together. And about 1986 or so, what I would do is, I was putting the sets together, and I remember very distinctly, I bought 3 wax boxes, Topps wax boxes from 86, ripped them open. I got through 2 boxes and I started, into the 3rd one, and I finished a set. So I was left with the rest of the packs in the box. And I thought, you know what, wouldn't it be cool to just keep these unopened to go along with the set that I put together and I hand collated. And that was the first unopened item that I ever saved and kept, was from 1986. So at that point I was a freshman in college. So I'm dating myself a little bit here, but I was, so I had some money, obviously not tons of money, but I had money, not like a kid where, you're buying a pack here or there. So I was able to buy a few wax boxes. So it was great. So I put that aside. Next year, 1987 comes along. I buy more put more sets together, but I keep even more unopened. Unfortunately, probably not a great year to keep unopened, comparison with other years. If I had started this journey maybe 5 years prior, probably would have worked out a lot better from a financial standpoint. But at the time, that's what started me down the road of collecting unopened. So I collected in 87, 88, 89, all the way through 91. I had unopened that I would buy, put aside while I was in college. And then after college, like many of us, I took a break from the hobby, doing life, getting married, all that. And then what ended up happening is in 97, I went to a local card shop and I was working on my Mets team sets. So I was collecting every Met card from 62 forward and buying it from this gentleman at the local quote shop. And as I'm there, I notice up on the wall, he has 1975 rack packs. And I'm like, oh, 75, that was like the first year that I was busting packs and all. I was like, I'd love to have one. And he told me, he said, Mike, these are great to keep put aside. I wouldn't recommend opening them. And I said, no, I'm not going to open them. I already have my 75 set from back when I was a kid. So I started buying 75 rack packs from him and putting those aside. So that's my current journey from 97 onward. Now I've been buying unopened now ever since 97 moving forward.
Wow. And so you focus a lot on unopened in the 70s now, it seems like. Is that fair?
Yes.
What are your current projects with your unopened in the 70s?
So my goals are, I've always tried to go backwards in time. So when I first got heavily into buying unopened.
Mhm.
I started with the 80s. I would buy a couple of boxes of each type of product. So I'd buy 2 boxes of wax, 2 boxes of cello, 2 boxes of racks from
Mhm.
85, 84, 83, 82. And I started doing that. Then I branched out to Don Ross and Fleer, buying 2 of each. The reason why I picked 2 of each is I have 2 sons. So I thought that if I bought 2, if anything were to happen, I said it'd be easy for them to split them up because they
Oh,
could just
okay.
take 1 box for each
Sure.
of them, and that would be great. And then what I did is I constantly moved earlier and earlier as I could afford more and more unopened, working back into the 70s, now into the mid 70s, and now really my focus is more like from 1974 to 1970.
Mm,
That range is what I'm collecting right now. But
sure.
as you know, with the prices, you can't buy it in quantity. So I'll buy a pack and then I might not buy anything for a couple of months, let's
Sure.
say,
Sure.
before I, pick something else up. But I'm totally fine with that because as you can see from my wall behind me, I have quite a lot that I've hoarded over the years. So I'm not looking to buy in quantity right now. I'm looking more to quality and rarity of the packs.
Sure. And for those of you listening to the podcast, I'm seeing behind Mike a 1972 Tops box, a 76 box, a 75 box, a 74 box, a 71 box, 80 box, some really, really awesome stuff. Some 80s Fleer product, which is always fun. There's a lot of really great stuff. So if you're listening to this, watch it on the YouTube channel too, because you can get some perspective on his collection. Where did so you've purchased a lot of your stuff, your at least the racks where your unopened rack collection began with this local card shop.
Correct.
And
Correct.
so how do you go about looking for rack packs now? Because you're a pretty avid rack pack collector. Is it mostly eBay or what is your main avenue?
Now it's more the Facebook group
Sure.
and the connections I've made over the years. A lot of it's private deals now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make deals with other collectors that I've gotten to know over the years. Probably at a certain point, I was doing local card shop, I was doing local shows, but I wasn't getting enough unopened because there's not a lot of product as far as using those avenues. So then I did the eBay route. So a lot of what I had gotten probably from the mid to late 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of eBay purchases,
Sure.
then going to the national. So 2012 was my first national that I went to.
Oh,
And
wow.
ever since then, I save up and I make my purchases. I try to make, major purchases at the national.
Sure. Yeah. And for those of you listening, Mike and I actually worked out. He's the individual that I worked out the trade with for the 75 rack for the 77 Carlton rack. So thank you for that. That was a national pickup, right? So that's pretty cool. So what is, if you have a dream item, right, in unopened, right? Is there some item that you're pursuing that is obtainable financially?
Is attainable or is it?
I'd like to, the obvious answer, at least for most people, it's like, oh, a 1952 Tops wax pack. Okay, something like that. Okay. But is there something that is in your obtainable potentially that you're actively pursuing right now on the Facebook group or something, anything like that?
Probably right now, the 71 wax pack graded, a PSA wax pack, probably in a grade of a 7. I'm doing a wax pack run of graded packs.
Sure.
And that's one of the years that I still have for my 70s run.
Okay. That's cool.
That would be one thing that I'm looking for. Up until a year or so ago, I was actively looking for 1969 and a 1970 rack pack. But fortunately, I finally was able to cross those two off my list and complete my rack pack run from 68 to 87. So I was pretty happy about that.
Oh, that's great. Did you pick up a 70 from BBCE? Was that one of their?
I actually, the one I did pick up was on consignment to BBCE. two nationals. So the last national we had before this one. So the one before
Sure.
Corona.
Okay.
He had a consigned 1970 rack, and I knew who the consigner was, so it didn't sell at the show because it was high.
Sure.
And I reached out to that individual, and over 6 months or so, we ended up finally agreeing on a price, and I ended up purchasing it from him.
Oh, that's
at
awesome.
that point.
That's cool. And you're a big Tom Seaver unopened collector as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I am.
Was that just a childhood hero of yours, or how did that come about?
Yes, that's definitely a childhood hero. I'm a long-suffering Met fan, so so obviously Siva was our best produced player that we ever had. So
Sure.
Obviously I gravitated towards him. As a hitter, Dave Kingman was my favorite hitter.
Oh.
Not anybody, it was pretty slim pickings when I was watching them in the late 70s, but Kingman was the guy as far as a hitter goes when I was younger, but by far Siva was my favorite Met of all time. So
Sure.
Once I started really getting into unopened, I said, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do a run of rack packs with Siva showing? So that's what I started pursuing that as well.
And how many Siva racks do you have, or what does the run look like?
The run looks like I have from 87, which is obviously his last year, going back to 1971. I have a league leader card of his showing on top of a rack.
Wow.
So that's my run. 72 is the first year that I have of his regular card, so his base card.
Wow.
Moving from 72 to 87, but 71 I have a league leader card, but I do have a line on an actual Siva regular card from 71 that a buddy of mine has, that at some point I'm going to try to work out a deal to get that, but it'll probably be another year or two before I pursue that.
Sure.
As you know, they're very, very expensive at this point. So
yeah. The 71s, and I've only seen a handful of 72 racks. That seems to be one of the rarest years.
72, in my opinion, 72 is much rarer than 71.
Sure.
And 70 is probably even more rare than 72, in my opinion. 69 is the toughest. I had the toughest time tracking down a 69 rack.
Sure.
And I actively looked over 10 years for one.
Wow.
And I only saw a few examples, and the timing wasn't right at the time that I saw them. But I could put it, I could count it on one hand, the number of legit 69 racks that I saw over that time span.
Yeah, there's only a few that I've ever seen, and one of them vintage brakes broke, or they ripped, which we won't get into that. But yeah, that's
I actually know the guy that sold them that rack pack.
Oh, it's just painful to watch. I watched it one time. I'm like, I will never watch this again because this is just blasphemy. But that's that's crazy. The guy that but that's how few and far between they are. When one goes on the market, might know the person who has it.
That's right. That's correct.
That's crazy. So do you have what are some of your favorite unopened items in your collection? Would you be okay showing a few items?
Definitely. So I pulled some items aside. This is probably one of my favorites.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's a 68 rack.
That's beautiful.
And as you can see, the circular hole punch
Sure.
that they used in 68, and the extra wide seams in here too.
Sure.
So you can tell this is a legit 68 rack. As you'll notice I have the holders, but I don't really like to get them wrapped by Steve.
Sure.
Only because I actually like to physically look at the rack and actually hold them outside the holder.
Sure.
So I know it's good. If I ever was to sell, then I would offer to say, hey, if you want, I'll send it directly to Steve for you. he could authenticate it, and then, it could go on its way.
Sure.
For me as a collector and doing this for so long, I feel comfortable and I know that it's good, so I don't need to wrap them. And I just really like to enjoy them and be able to examine them and look at them a lot closer and not have the shrink wrap around them.
Sure. Yeah. And there are some who have that, some argue or some make comments on my YouTube channel. Sometimes they're like, the shrink wrap detracts from the presentation sometimes. And I think
And it does.
Yeah.
And it does. It does. But if you don't have the experience with
Mhm.
racks and all, by all means, you should definitely utilize Steve and get his, okay that, this is a legitimate rack and get it wrapped. This is the one that took me forever to find.
Oh,
This
wow.
is a 69. Again, you can see the circular hole punch and the extra wide seams.
Wow.
This is the back. So like I said, with this, I bought this in the GAI holder.
Sure.
I have no need to take it out and get it wrapped or anything. It's totally protected in here.
Sure.
At some point, I may bust it out of here, but for right now, I just keep it in the GAI holder, and I'm totally fine.
Sure.
Totally fine with that.
Yeah.
So then I'll move on to my 1970
Wow.
rack, again with the circular hole punch. And this one, I couldn't resist. I had Gil Hodges showing on top. This was actually an REA purchase.
Wow.
So this one definitely was one that I wanted, even though you'll see in a second, I did buy another 1970 rack, maybe like 2 months before this one went on auction. And I couldn't resist it. So now I have two in my collection. So
That's
but here's the other one.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful. Wow, that is just, I love the headers of these with the big circle, the circular header. It's just, they're just
And
gorgeous.
this is nice too, because it's the first time they had the yellow header card,
Sure.
which is cool too. I like the yellow header card.
Yeah.
The other thing I like about 1970 is, if you can see, I don't know, put it closer, there's 54 cards
Sure.
in here. So before that, if you look at the 69, it's only 36. So there's a lot more cards in the 1970 racks.
Sure. Well, and I read somewhere that with 70 racks, it's also very common to have repeat cards. If you were to break the rack open, that you'd get.
Yes.
Do you know why that is?
Because the way so I'm trying to remember which one this one is. I think this one's the 5th series. A lot of times what they would do is they would have, say, 4th, and 5th series. So because they have so much of the 4th series cards,
Mm-hmm.
you're bound to get duplicates because there's only like 132 cards on a sheet. So each of the series basically had 132 cards. So if you have a rack with all series 4 or all series 5, you have to have 54 cards of the 132. Topps wasn't as interested in, collation because they were trying to sell them by the series. So they just, whatever went into the machine got in there. So you could have cards the same. Actually, I can show you because I have an example. So the 68,
Mm-hmm.
you see the edge Stroud?
Yep.
On back.
Wow.
Is on back in the other section.
Wow.
So right there you could see that it duplicated.
Wow, that's so cool.
That you'll see a lot. And if you ever see the vintage guys break these, which we don't obviously encourage them to do that,
Yeah.
but you do see a lot of duplication Usually you'll get maybe 2 or 3 of the same card, of maybe, 7 or 8 of them or so. And that's the reason why, because they only were loading them by series. They weren't being as particular as they started to become in the later 70s, where they were doing it by sheet, and they were really trying to collate the cards so you would have no duplication in the packs.
Sure. How did you, you obviously know a lot about collation, and you know a lot about how to determine if an item's authentic or not. How did you accumulate this knowledge? Was it opening packs? How did you get all this knowledge? Because you're one of the gurus on Facebook. You are the one of the go-to.
Studying, a lot of studying, sure. A lot of talking to fellow, one particular gentleman that I know you're familiar with, Tim Monahan.
Sure.
Is a very close friend of mine, and we would exchange ideas about collation and all. Mm-hmm. And from that and studying and looking, we learned, hey, certain cards can't be on top of legitimate packs, and certain cards can only be, on back of certain packs. And one of the things I always tell a lot of people is look at the packs that Fritsch has on their website, because they purchase directly from Topps. And I always tell people when they see these 1975 cellos with George Brett on top or Robin Yount on top, and I tell them, they're bad, and they say, well, how do you know? Were you there at Topps, watching them put them in? And I tell them, well, look, I said, have you ever seen Larry Fritsch, or, I know he's passed away, but Fritsch cards sell a pack with George Brett on top or Robin Yount on top? And the answer is no, they've never sold a pack with them. I said, and if they had them, you'd be darn sure that they'd be selling those packs for a lot of money if they had them. But I said, it's because they were collated that way. Brett can only be on the back of a 75 cello, and same thing with Yount. He can only be on back. And that is a good way to study and see collation. And also, as you alluded to, opening packs is definitely the way that collation, makes itself apparent to somebody. Tim does a lot of opening, especially back when 10, 15 years ago, when we were newer to unopened, and it was a lot cheaper to rip some stuff too. So he opened a lot of stuff, and you could see, oh, look, only cards from, these 2 sheets can be on top, and these other sheets can be on back, and learning, okay, I see when the gum, you open a pack and, it goes through a certain number of sheets on the top. Once you see the gum, all of a sudden it's different sheets. Why is that? Well, it's because Topps loaded them that way. So wouldn't it make sense that they always loaded all their packs that way? And then as you open more and more, you say, yep, I see that pack's, good, it's legit. I'm hitting star pack, star cards in the pack, and the collation runs true just like I'd expect it. Whenever you open a pack and you get nothing, or you think, oh, this looks funky or something like that, especially watching Ripper videos. I always love to watch YouTube Ripper videos. And you could see sometimes when they're opening, I'll sequence it and say, oh, that pack was bad, and they don't hit anything. And say, oh, of course they didn't hit anything because it was a resealed pack.
Sure. Well, and I watched the video of you at the National where you opened the 76 rack, and you were basically able to tell why it was a bad pack. So what was wrong with that pack in particular?
That one, the cards were mixed up in the so what was showing in the different sections didn't match up with the card on top, and the card on back weren't from the same expected sheet that you'd expect.
Sure.
So 76, just so you brought up 76, for example, there's 6 sheets that Topps produced in 76. So you'd expect 2 sheets go in one section, 2 sheets go in the middle section, and the other 2 sheets go in the far section. And typically they don't mix them up. There are some variation to that. In 1976, at the tail end of the year, Topps just started loading the packs haphazardly.
Okay.
So there are legitimate ones, but the header card needs to be, it's a different header card. It's not the header card that's standard for 76 Topps baseball. I believe they used a football header card instead at the end of the year, because they probably ran out of the 76 baseball header cards and they still had excess inventory to get rid of.
Mhm.
So they used the football that they had, because the packs were going to be the same price. And then they were just trying to get rid of cards. So they just loaded the 76 racks up haphazardly, as opposed to the ones that have the typical header card. They're collated very strategically based off 2 sheets, 2 sheets, 2 sheets. So getting back to the rack that was at the National, the sheets on top, the card on top and bottom didn't match what I would expect to be in that section.
Mhm.
And as you saw, as we opened it up, I think the biggest hit was a Willie Stargell that had a defect on the card as well. There was a little like notch in the card. So it was damaged anyway. And that's probably why they just left that card in the pack. But that the only other star card that was showing was the Jim Hunter, I believe, was on that rack.
Yeah, I think that was, yeah, he was showing.
And that's why they put him on top to try to sell the rack, but they did a bad job resealing it, and there was actually a hole in the rack as well.
Wow, that's crazy. It's, I mean, but it goes to show how knowledge is power in this area of the hobby, especially because you could easily get taken. Someone that doesn't know could easily lose a lot of money in this. And that's why we need people like you and Steve Hart and the people that know what they're doing to tell us, you know, to kind of show us the way, if you will. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, I know it's we've already gone over time, but I don't want to keep you too long. But it has just been a pleasure speaking with you about Unopened, and I'd love to have you on again at some point. We could get into different areas of Unopened. But do you have any words of wisdom before we depart?
First off, thank you very much for having me on the show. Obviously, you know, I watch your videos. I like your videos because they're much shorter than a lot of the other videos that YouTubers put out. And I like that because I like to take 15, 20 minutes, watch a video. I don't want to watch a 2-hour video. So I appreciate the shorter videos that you put out. So that's great. But I would love to come on again, and
Awesome.
do another segment. I could show you some more of my packs, for everybody to enjoy, because as you know, the big thing about the hobby is being able to share the hobby with other collectors. So, I really enjoy doing that. But as far as words of wisdom, just enjoy the hobby, take advantage of everybody in the, I know in our Facebook group, and even, send messages to Brandon on his YouTube channel. Everybody's here to help. If there's any questions that you guys have, feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer anything that Brandon might not be able to answer as far as anything Unopened wise that you guys might have. But otherwise, enjoy collecting, and I'll kick it off back over to you to wrap it up.
Sounds great. No, very much appreciated. Thanks again, Mike. Take care, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll be back with another episode soon.